ever been afraid of anything? Well, today we're here to talk about what you're afraid of. But first, let's turn those lights up. The horror genre is almost implacable, full of the most terrifying things you've ever seen. From slashers to cosmic horror to aliens to the underwater seas to supernatural fears. Today we're here to talk about some of the most terrifying genre tropes of the horror fiction. First, let's start off with some of my favorites. But first, let's get back to my intro. Hello everybody, it's Electric Venom, and today we're here to talk about some of the most classic horror tropes of all time, and we'll discuss some of the more classic cliches of horror. So, first of all, let's get to some categories. There are 4 specific ones, or 6 in this. Only 4 in my script, but I've decided to improvise. First, the obvious, the most classical, slasher films. Let's get to it. In classic slasher films, the most played out trait is immortality for our killers. We find ourselves constantly coming back to the same genre portrayal of murder. Like Jason and Michael Myers, this genre of slasher focuses on a supernatural killer with superhuman abilities. A slasher killer like this normally gauges after young adults or teens admitting to discontinue their sexually litigious actions and explicit drug humor. Normally all movie protagonists except for our next trope, the morally pure last member, who somehow stops this killer. And in the next coming sequel, people now notice that the killer was not so dead. Now, let's go to another version of my favorite slasher horror. This is the subset of a horror genre, although the slockier example. Suspense almost entirely was cut out by gore. They are often considered the B movies of the horror genre. A history of classical slashers can be divided into several distinct waves and categories. A classic thriller, Hitchcock's Psycho, is often cited as having a simple and direct obvious influence on the horror genre. It introduces a sympathetic character who is automatically and somehow even mysteriously more murdered. What else is held in this fold of horror? The horror genre also has roots in some Italian films that I'm not going to say because I could probably butcher all the actors' names. In fact, the most original American horror stories like The Texas Chainsaw Massacre, Alice, and Black Christmas were almost directly influenced by Italian movie fold. Imagine a full universe where even the tiniest spot of hope for a future is itself blindness. This splits down 2 paths, Ridley Scott's and Lovecraftian. The Ridley Scott horror genre is specifically alien, based on 3 specific tropes. A special race of aliens, or in his case, the xenomorphs, awake from eternal slumber. The Predator and xenomorphs, of course, followed this. 2. The creatures from Earth, under all people. They spread their horrific seed by killing all the people, such as a xenomorph's chest burst in a classic sci-fi horror scene. Now, take a step away from aliens and predators of Ridley's classic. You will come across terror and demonic madness and dark cults, hideous monstrosities, truths so terrible that none may comprehend them, such as H.P. Lovecraft's horror. This type of fictional horror doesn't just scare you, shows you the truth, how truly powerless and almost insignificant you are in a universe in which everything else is an endlessly powerful alien entity, like Cthulhu, the only true being of full power. When it comes to the most terrifying creatures on Earth, people may fear sharks, from the movie Jaws, or the new 2018 movie coming out, Meg, or even Sharknado if you think that's terrifying. People are afraid of this terror is because, you never know what's going to come get you from the deep. If it could just grab you, pull you down, tear you apart, and you don't know what truly lies beneath you. Sharks and disgusting creatures that you've never seen before. This is why it's terrible to be afraid of the deep. One of the more interesting concepts of horror is the supernatural. We think about things such as The Ring or The Conjuring. People are afraid of these because it represents their hellish and demonic fears, people's religious and most satanic feeds. And I really wish that maybe we could just get away. But no, even something as terrifying as a little girl who's haunted by the death and the satanic rituals have came out of a TV and kills people after 7 days of hearing a call. Maybe even something like Freddy Krueger. Or, on the other hand, Pennywise, the dancing clown. When you're in a simulation, some things you fear are, well, unseen. What you play in video games, just horror games, well, that's a whole nother story. There's a thing about video games that, well, terrifies people to the point where they just think they can't get through it. There is, of course, Five Nights at Freddy's, as this clip here shows. Then there is Slender, the most terrifying and, well, popular horror game, I'd say. Then there's my favorite, of course, SCP Containment Breach. A game about, well, things that just can't be controlled by you or the government. Anomalies in time, the most, well, disturbing creatures, forcing you to want to tear your limbs and make yourself bleed out.
Silly boy, you still think you can see me? You'll never see me. You'll see only what your little mind can allow. Go! Now, for if you stay, you'll lose your little mind in my dead lives. Like all the others. Like all the others. Ha ha ha.